Cool. Looks good.
everything works.
Yeah, it's all
That's
recording.
easy.
Yeah, no, Google make it easy for you.
Hmm.
But the thing is, you have to be careful. Like last week, it was funny. Last week, I hadn't used it in ages, and I didn't realize that I had accidentally invited all my work circle to
Uh-huh.
to listen to the interview. So probably just as well it didn't work. The default on Google is to invite everybody, so I didn't realize that. So um, that's a privacy issue once you start using Google's tools, you know.
Yeah, well, these tools are they want the most publicity they can
Yeah,
get.
yeah.
So
So I'll give the date. It's the 9th of February 2015, and I'm interviewing Frieder Weiss for my PhD research. So I'd like to extend my thanks to you, Frieder, for agreeing to come on
sure, you're
and give me
welcome.
some of your time and answer some questions. So I guess I'll start with some fairly straightforward questions. Um, I have them printed out here on a bit
Okay.
of paper to try and keep myself focused. So basically, I was just going to ask you to give a little bit of information about your background. Um, I know, for example, that you were writing software and you were using computer vision systems in Bosch. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
Um,
correct. Um, I studied engineering
mhm.
at a time where information technology was still small, or
Mhm.
meaning mainframe computers. So in the 80s and early 90s. Just as a coincidence, I worked with quality inspection cameras, for
Right.
example, for Siemens or Bosch, like major companies. And they basically install these measurement tools in a factory producing parts.
Right.
So I was able to get hold of such a system,
Cool.
and also being a musician and like a I don't know amateur musician, but it was a big part of my life back then, and I tried to merge these worlds. So one of the first thing I did was making a MIDI interface for the inspection, the camera system.
All right.
And
Cool.
at a concert in Nuremberg with my band, we performed with the movement to sound
Right.
interactivity. That was the beginning.
And
And
what date was that? Was that in the 1980s?
that was 92.
92. Cool.
Mhm.
And were you using like Max MSP to do that, or were you writing software in CSAM?
No, um, I was using an Atari
Right.
with Logic.
Yeah.
And I mean, I try to find special uses. For example, I try to improvise with a sequencer program.
Right.
I don't think I had Maximus P back then. I was usually writing my own software. I wasn't, yeah, probably wasn't even aware that it existed already.
Yeah.
Do you remember when they brought it out?
I think it was the very early 1990s, sometime around
Yeah,
91,
I,
92.
I would guess this MIDI functionality, like the core Max, would have been out back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also built like drum machines, like physical drums and bells with little electromagnetic hammers and that kind of
Okay.
stuff, and
Cool.
attached it to the sequencer program. So I tried to find new uses or links
Yeah. That's really
without
interesting.
without being aware that it's in any way special, because back then technology was really emerging and
Yeah.
people just did whatever they could. So it was the natural use of technology,
Yeah.
making your own interfaces. It was
Yeah.
very, very standard.
And Sorry, there was. Oh yeah, sorry. I was just going to ask you what kind of musical instruments do you play, or were you classically
Um,
trained in anything, or did you just
yeah, I had cello lessons at school.
cool?
I had piano lessons. I played trombone. So it's part of my family background. They all played multiple instruments.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, my father played the organ, and he always had this dream of his family having like a little orchestra.
yeah, yeah. Why not? Cool.
Yeah,
That's really interesting. So you were kind of just kind of driven to tinker with technology
yeah, yeah,
from
yeah.
very early
Hmm.
on in your career. And
Hmm.
and how did you make that leap from taking the computer vision system that you were using in your professional life and then, like just
Hmm.
taking that and sort of moving it to your kind of like your experimental
Yeah,
artistic side of your life.
right, right. It was a natural evolution, I would say. Most things in my life are kind of a natural evolution. I'm not
Yeah,
trying too hard. I'm not super ambitious, like in trying to make context of things. It's just like a natural flow and evolution. And well, the outcome of this first concert with a vision to sound interface was that musicians are not good movers. It's not interesting enough as a like a physical performance.
right. Yeah.
So, and I knew a choreographer
Uh-huh.
in Nuremberg, my home city,
Okay.
and he was always using this art and science relationship. Like he would make a dance about the DNA structure, you know, like
Yeah.
just floral. And yeah, and I talked to him and I showed him the video of the performance, and then it took him a while, and then he got back to me and we developed the show together. That was in '95.
What was his name?
Robert Wexler from a group called Palindrome.
All right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and we actually worked almost 10 years together on that kind of show. And that was a very funny and you know, unique show in '95. It was, I call it an interactive circus now, because
Hmm.
we had all the ideas already back then. They were like biosensors, like for
Yeah.
example muscle sensors and heartbeat sensors, and so we investigated all the like a whole range of possibilities. In this first show, we had an internet chat, which was quite ambitious in '95,
Yeah.
meaning dial in with a modem into a university network and like do a text chat, which we projected.
Yeah.
Um, Audience participation, um, yeah, these motion interfaces, um, choreography software, Lifeforms, you probably know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so there were so many elements, and each of these fragments, more or less, or experiments, they maybe last 3 to 6 minutes. So we didn't have a larger piece,
Right.
and many of these ideas were not evolved enough to like sustain for half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
And well, we learned a lot over those years.
Cool. And then I'm kind of feeding off what I already know from talking to Gideon.
Mhm.
And so you met Gideon at a conference in Monaco, is that correct?
That's
Uh,
correct. That
and then
was in 2004, I guess, right?
yeah, there before. And then following kind of a couple of discussions that you had there in Monaco, you decided to go and do some workshopping
Um,
in Melbourne, is that right?
well, there was a relevant step. For the first almost 10 years, I was mostly working with movement to sound relationship. That was the palindrome work.
Mm,
And part of that evolution is I got stuck with it. I couldn't progress any further. Like that was around 2003.
right.
And then I was working with an Australian dancer, Emily Fernandez,
Okay.
and we developed the first visual interfaces, like a shadows piece, where her projected shadows, but in real time were delayed in multiple stages. So that was the
Oh, right.
first experiment with visual interactivity, and it was a surprising result because people didn't need an explanation anymore.
Right.
With the movement to sound interface, you need to explain what are you actually doing, what's the relationship. Well, you have to be very clear, like you do, like beaming and drawing, like very clear gestures to convince your audience that it's really functional. With visual, it's much easier. So, and then from 2003, I mostly focused on the visual interactivity, developing this. And then Emily actually introduced me to Gideon.
Okay.
She's also from Melbourne, so
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
And
and we had this friendship understanding, like really like spot on when we met in
cool.
Monaco. Was this connection? So and then was this idea we could try something, which was meant to develop into a section of a larger piece of Chunky Move.
Right.
But in the end, it was a standalone dance piece like Glow, you probably know.
Yeah.
But it was a study, actually. It was not meant to be like a big performance piece. It was like just investigating the possibilities, and it was suddenly hugely successful for that kind of production.
That must have been a pretty exciting time.
It was very exciting, and I clearly remember that we were very uncertain how the audience would respond and how this would be taken, or whether it has any value. It was an etude or like a study. And it starts with a number of very formal scenes. Like we could say like they're like more rectangular boxes, and then there's circles. And so there's this investigation into different ways of visualizing movement, or which is also shaping the movement. So what we did a couple of months or half a year before we did the actual production, we had a workshop in Melbourne, and not using the dancer we wanted for the show, just like someone to experiment with and what kind of movement would work with it. There were a few substantial developments in that. One aspect is that the projection is really close to the body.
Right.
So it integrates and molds in. That's really an essential step. Because there's often a competition if you have a dance piece with projections. The audience's eye doesn't know what to focus on. Do you look on the mover, or do you look at the projection?
Okay.
It's very easy to overpower with projection because it's a larger, more mobile surface. So, and that doesn't happen with like the Chunky Move productions because they're really close together. But it's great because Gideon loves working on the floor. So it's a natural development. And the other paradigm shift is we decided that the performer is not aware of the projection. They are not looking at the projection. They are not playing with the projection. It's just happening together. They're not aware of a projection world they exist in.
Okay.
And that's also a very essential step in that work.
Okay. So in that case, it would be very much the projection would be following the dancer, and so as not to put pressure on the dancer in a sense to
it's more
concentrate.
no, it's I mean that piece I told you with the shadows and Emily, she was literally playing with the shadows, like we had a shadow image, but also the mirrored shadow image. And she really needed to follow it to make the projection work together. So she was in contact with the projection. And by not doing that in the chunk, he generated totally different psychology.
Yeah.
Like you look in this jungle of projection and you see a creature in a world, and she's the figure is not aware of that world. It's like a metaphor. We are not fully aware of the world we live in. We don't really understand it.
Yeah.
Because we don't know about any alternative. It's just
Sure.
so. And technically, I think my obsession to be really low latency with the projection is also key in that work. So meaning there's no, like the most minimal delay between the dance action and the projection following.
Okay.
That's an essential element because it's very easy. Every piece of device, like the camera, the computer, the projector, they're adding this delay.
Yeah.
And then you can really lose contact if there's. You think it's functional, but it doesn't give the same tightness if there's more latency. So that was also key to the production.
Yeah. And the visuals in Glow, in fairness now, I haven't actually seen a live performance of Glow. I've seen Mortal Engine live. I saw it at the South Bank Centre. But from what I've seen on the video documentation of Glow, it seems to be very much more delineating the movement, actually to a certain extent enhancing the movement. Whereas in Mortal Engine, there's a lot more autonomy in place. It does enhance the movement, but it does. You can see that it's very much more a kind of the graphics are far more emergent in the way that they're programmed.
Yeah. That's also an evolution over the last 10, 12 years. Naturally, I'm driven to be very close with the body. Other people work differently with interactivity. It could just be like a video that is following and tracking the position.
Yeah.
For example, I'm not that interested in that. It doesn't work for me.
It's
so
like an
always,
enhanced spotlight.
It's right, like a gobo spotlight. So I was always trying to work with the body and the movement. Initially it was just like this tracking of the body, and now it's more like an encounter with something you influence. It's like another body. It's like another dancer, or another performer, which is closely related. Like with the particles, that's a good example. It's also already happening in Model Engine. These particles that come to the dancer, they are sort of independent, but they're relating to the performer.
Yeah.
That's kind of the tricky issue. What kind of projections and algorithms can you come up with that have a behavior on their own?
Yeah.
But still relate to the performer.
But that's very much what I'm studying thematically is how much autonomy can we give over to the computer on stage? This idea of having the computer as an independent performer, but not totally independent, because obviously the programmer is programming the rules of the system.
Yes.
But this is very much the line of questioning that I'm going after.
Okay.
So it's very interesting. Like I mean, I noticed, for example, that you're using cell division algorithms and particle system algorithms. And obviously that the very fact that they are what they are gives them autonomy. But whereabouts, or how did you become interested in these, or how did you come across these? How did you decide that to move away from the 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 formal delineation of the dancer to this idea of the emergent.
Well, to be honest, I work a lot with reviewing algorithms of whether they have an aesthetically or artistic use. And so I just review many different things and try them, and then
Mm.
it was an evolution. Just like I was using optical flow algorithms and analyzing the movement, which is basically generating a map of movement directions. Right? Probably have
Okay.
seen them. Like often they are visualized. Like you have little arrows,
Yeah.
and you see what's the dominant direction of visual information for each pixel. And
Okay. Yeah.
then I basically use that as an acceleration map for a particle system,
Cool.
which is a very efficient way to have something really alive, very responsive. So it's just finding the right tools. And now, I mean, I'm more actively searching for this independent world and physics system, like game engine technologies and that kind of thing. So it's more reviewing algorithms, and then there's maybe a shift of focus. It wasn't a big plan. I wasn't aware of it even, but I found new things that I enjoyed and liked.
And um, I guess where did you where did you first come across these algorithms? Is there any particular kind of movement of computer research, I guess, computer software research that you'd be really interested in? I guess you've kind of touched on it a little bit there with the game engine and physics.
Yeah, it's
Like for example, the something that kind of occurs to me would be something like the cell division algorithm. I'm not sure if you're aware or not of the genre of artificial life. Are you interested in
I am interested, but I don't know it.
mm,
I haven't come across. I didn't really understand. What did you say? What is it called?
artificial life?
Ah,
It's a kind
artificial
of
life. Okay.
yeah, it's a kind of a genre of emergent computer
Yeah,
art work
sure.
kind of stuff. And I guess cell division algorithms will play like a big part
Yeah, yeah.
of the
I
research.
mean, they have a lot. They have a long history, like these simple versions of life.
Yeah, yeah. For example, Carl Sims, do you know him?
No.
He's quite interesting.
No, you
He,
should give me some of your insights or
yeah,
hints.
yeah, I certainly will.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Carl Sims, you could just Google him. You know, you could look at
mhm,
stuff on that he has
mhm.
on YouTube or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but
Um, I mean, my experience is things are a little bit hard to control. Like you have to control them with parameter settings, and stability is always, or reproducibility is always an issue for me because I'm working quite production oriented. That's basically what I do
mm,
theater productions
mhm,
or even corporate shows. So, and then you need to find a way to um, have the autonomy and the reproducibility because I'm doing shows in the end. Research is only a part of it.
yeah,
So I need to find something that is generating a predictable result.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's just it, isn't it? At
And
the
it's
end of
not
the day,
always
the
easy to
curtain
get.
goes up.
Yeah, right. And then yeah, it can be tricky.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
nothing is happening.
yeah. Well, I guess some of the most interesting stuff obviously does take place in the workshops, you know,
Yeah, definitely.
but then we have to kind of put these limits on you know on the system. Otherwise, it could just go crazy, and you know the performer's the
Well,
one standing there with
well, not only
the world
crazy, maybe
on.
nothing is happening. It's just
Yeah,
still.
yeah, or crashed. Yeah, crashed or total chaos.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh. And that's in production. That's funny. That's always a little conflict because if you do, let's say, what I have done, like a show for a car launch, right?
Mhm.
They want pre-renderings or like the big musical King Kong. They want to see how it will look like a year before.
Right.
And that's almost impossible for me because I don't know what the set is, what the contrasts are, what the visual input will be, what the
Yeah.
movement will be. It's really hard to predict what works best, what kind of system works efficiently as a visual.
Yeah. What car launch was that? Was that the BMW? Well, I saw something on
Uh,
BMW recently.
I did many. I did Porsche,
Okay.
BMW. The biggest one was Mercedes, the A-Class.
Okay.
Um, I just did something for BMW i8, the electrical hybrid,
Okay.
just a couple of days ago. Um,
And do
I have done many car shows, which is funny because my life was always, I'm not really that interested in cars, but
yeah, sure.
with the quality inspection companies and Bosch, that was basically car parts they
Mm.
produced. So my
Okay.
life has always been in the context of car parts and car shows.
I didn't see the car stuff on your website. Maybe
No,
I just
I'm
didn't.
not publishing them.
Okay.
For those clients, the artistic works are enough inspiration,
Mm.
and you probably don't want to tell them that you did like 5 other brands already.
Mm.
So I think from a marketing perspective, this works better for me, not
Okay.
showing them works
Yeah.
I've done for other companies. And I don't want to stress it too much, to put too much focus on it,
Yeah.
on those events.
Because your heart is
They,
in the live theater.
yes, I mean both. I like these big shows. They have a massive scale. You can do things you usually don't get hold of, like moving LED panels we used in this
Yeah.
Mercedes show. So there is, or like a 30-meter wide stage. That's just great. You don't get that all the
Yeah.
time.
Sure.
Or I did something at the Brandenburg Gate for the anniversary of the war. So, like these event or corporate shows, they offer scale often, which you don't get in theater productions, or yeah, availability of technology, huge LED screens, whatever.
Yeah. There was it was one of the statements I read actually. It was on the I was on it was on the Mortal Engine site.
Hmm.
And it was kind of I think there's a quote here indicating that you had no kind of aesthetic position on the productions that you were involved with. Um, However, I'd argue that your designs are hugely influential on the aesthetic outcome. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess I was just wondering, that's 10 years ago now. I think
That's
probably
yeah.
when that blurb was written for the thing, and I was just wondering how your position had kind of changed
I do not even
over the years.
remember. I do not even remember that, but no,
Like I guess
I
now that you,
definitely have aesthetical proposition. I mean,
yeah,
certainly. Um, what I still believe in, uh, what artists often claim is that they have this vision of how it will look. And I
right,
question that because I approach it from an algorithm or like, as I said, reviewing an algorithm. Is there something that is interesting? So, and that's how we developed all the chunky movers. We are looking at possibilities. and then taking whatever is practical. Because, I mean, the artist or the director or whoever, designer might have visions.
Mm,
It's just too hard to implement them.
yeah,
And so some things might be easy, some things are almost impossible you can dream of if you're not understanding the technology.
yeah,
And in the end, often the aesthetic or the possibilities, the visual are driven by the possibilities. That's true for animation movies or whatever. They're always on the level of what's technologically possible.
hmm
Or there's a new aesthetic, or it's shaping movies when you have 3D. Like you edit them differently, like you shoot them differently. So that's actually what I find quite interesting. Also in music, if you improvise on a saxophone, the outcome is different than improvising on a piano.
yeah,
It's
sure.
just like the scales we play, the tempo, the rhythms. It's very much influenced by the tool.
Yeah, I guess what kind of on that point, like what kind of like discussions would you have with the directors and the choreographers? And, would there be kind of a lot of kind of like what's possible and what's not possible, or where we can do X, Y?
Um,
Oh,
no, it's actually often we just do a workshop, a session together, and an inspirational session, and I show them what I'm working on and what's new. Or, for example, with King Kong, there was, in a way, the largest scale production. Do you know about it? It's a
which one?
King Kong, a music
Oh
theater
yeah, I know
production,
about it. Yeah,
and we have worked on it for 4 years. And I went a couple of times to do like 3-week workshops where we would investigate how the puppet movement would work with visuals, how it all can link, and just look at visuals. We made a catalog of possibilities, and
right.
then the director can choose from them. It's like I'm offering a palette, and then you can say,
Sure.
for this moment, I want this kind of look.
Mm. And that's
It's
going to Broadway, is that right?
still working on it. It's a little
Yeah.
bit delayed. It was supposed to open already.
Oh,
There's some changes. They want to change the book.
okay.
It was, I think, it was very successful as like the puppet is very successful, the visuals are very successful, the design aspects are very successful. It's a little bit criticized for the storytelling,
Okay.
like narrative, the book, and I think it still needs like on the music side. For the musical, you always need these songs, these unforgettable songs,
Yeah. Okay.
but it's tricky to just produce them on
Yeah.
demand.
Sure. Uh,
So
so are they looking at like drafting in some big composers from LA or something like that? Or?
yeah, I mean, there's a known producer composer, Marius de Vries. He
Okay.
made a few of the original music, but the rest is like arranging it and some
Yeah.
songs by others. So these are the two aspects that will be reworked.
hmm
And it's planning to go to Broadway and to Hamburg for the first season. And then we'll see. It's a
And
huge production.
is that the first was that the first time that you had kind of worked with robotics? But maybe that wasn't specifically your work, was it?
No, it wasn't.
The puppet.
No, no,
You
it's
were more the
it's
visualization
yeah.
aspect.
I'm the video designer for this
Yeah.
piece, but it was a great collaboration with the
Mm.
puppet company. I mean, it's Sunny Childers is a fantastic designer. They do that for many years now,
Mm.
starting with animatronics for movie industry, and they had a show called Walking with Dinosaurs,
Right. Okay.
like an arena show where you see these moving life-size dinosaurs.
Mm.
So they have, yeah, they have developed the technology over many, many years. But we made adaptations, like we would investigate how the paint could work, or how we integrate infrared lights, or like how we make it compatible.
Yeah, yeah. That's that's the tricky part, right?
It's a tricky part.
Yeah,
But there
yeah,
was, I mean, that's all again great with the large productions. They have the resources to
yeah,
fund a 4-year research phase, which is great. I mean,
mm,
an artistic project can never do that
yeah.
usually.
Was that that was produced in the Sydney Opera House? Is it?
No, it was in Melbourne,
Okay, in Melbourne.
in the Regent Theatre, which is a musical theatre, a
Yeah,
really large one.
yeah.
So I guess audience-wise, it's the largest live show I've done.
And it was a 30-meter stage, was it, or something like that?
It's a huge stage here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's kind of a dream come true, really, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Working
it's true.
at that scale, it's really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Lots of projectors. I mean, it's also a little bit frustrating because then I had these 5 huge projectors, like
mm.
larger than what I usually can ever get.
Yeah.
And with the amount of light they have on a stage like that, it's still not competing with lights.
Oh right. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
with a theater like that, has it completely shifted over to LED lighting, or have they got like place
yes,
flooded
no,
with them?
there's no tungsten lighting anymore,
Okay, yeah, yeah. Well, at least that
which makes
makes it
which
easier.
makes my life much easier
Yeah,
because there's an interference with the infrared
yeah,
technology, with the tracking and the light bulbs.
yeah.
Now everything is either moving lights with the HMI-based bulbs, like discharge lamps,
Hmm.
or we had LED profiles, and then there's the huge LED wall, which doesn't interfere. So I think it's also interesting that theater lighting has shifted so drastically, like in the color temperature.
Right.
It's much more daylight focused, like
Oh, yeah.
colder
Okay.
lights. And it took the audience a little while, but not long. When I saw my first shows with LED and like cold light sources,
Yeah,
I was a bit skeptical, but it goes quickly. The
yeah.
change is quick.
Cool.
Yeah.
Um, and I was just wondering, do you have any aesthetic or technological theory that underpins your work? Um, like how, for example, would you be interested in like any kind of aesthetic or technological theory? Um, if so, what, or how would you position yourself as a kind of what kind of books do you read? Do you go to conferences? Obviously, I know you went to one in Monaco, but do you go to
Yeah, I
kind of?
go to conferences, but I'm not like an academic. This is not
Hmm,
my full-time world.
yeah,
I'm doing productions. I'm reviewing algorithms. I'm talking to colleagues. Definitely conferences, but they're often like media art, and which
yeah,
is less academic
yeah, sure.
than maybe your world.
Hmm. I
Mm.
try to mix it up myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
And sometimes my criticism with media art, with at least parts of it, that reality has overtaken like the visions that were driving media art, and now we're a little bit stuck with them. Like
a little bit what? Sorry.
we are still working with a dream that maybe already has become true, like
Right. Okay.
and this vision about how it would affect society or what is changing. I mean, maybe not so much the young generation, but there are some movements, I think, with well, when we started working with interactivity, that was not part of our everyday's life, like that level of participation or touch interfaces. It
Mm,
was a little bit hard to convince the audience that it's really working. And that was
mm,
accompanied by a theory or like a vision about the future. but now it's all there, like social networking, like the
Yeah.
connectivity. Part of those projects I'm talking about would involve distributed performance, like you perform together in different places,
Hmm.
which I think is completely happening if everybody is with their friends on the mobile phone.
Yeah.
This is a totally new networked society.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether it's relevant to do these network performances anymore, like whether they can add something. But that's what I mean, like maybe reality has overtaken the vision.
Yeah. I would agree to a certain extent that
Mm.
we have we're kind of
And
living this society
yeah,
of the
yeah,
spectacle to a certain
yeah.
extent that was kind of talked up, in the 60s.
And I'm certainly interested in like these autonomy aspects. I did work with EEG electrodes, like brain waves, which I think
Sure.
is always a little bit overrated or hyped. But I did some experiments, and the signals were really representing my inner states, however they are designed. So I came to that provoking statement that I think I'm just a biological machine,
Hmm.
which in a way I believe, because I
Yeah.
think eventually you can simulate consciousness or like
Yeah.
yeah, but it's probably still a long way to go.
Yeah. Definitely. But
It's a
no,
long, we're not very far.
no. Yeah, I'd agree. But what you're saying there is actually just going back a little bit.
Mhm.
What I was talking about earlier, this artificial life genre,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
idea of very, very simple, very, very complex things can emerge from very kind of simple interactions between
yeah,
particles,
yeah,
very,
yeah.
very, very kind of
Mhm.
basic particles. I mean, when you think about it, we are also a very, very basic interaction of
Yeah,
molecules and
yeah.
particles, and we are,
But there are many aspects, like emotion would be a next one that interests me,
yeah.
because I mean, how could you implant something like emotion in a particle or in an autonomous system, which is in some neurologist theories, or what I believe in, is emotion is uh, a tool to make decisions, a decision-making tool.
Okay.
Because when I studied, there was this term called uh, artificial intelligence, meaning or expert systems. It
Yeah.
was usually basically a database. You put all the information in, and then you generate rules how to make decisions, or like how to um, rate and value, like to come to a result.
Hmm.
And it ended in a disaster. Didn't lead anywhere, the
Yeah.
expert systems, because life is too complex to make a formula. You have just to like link A and B, and then you come to C, right?
Hmm.
And I think in our lives, emotion is a way out of that. So you create a shortcut, which is partly triggered by information. It's partly relating to memories or like experience you already have. But it's kind of summarized into a shortcut, which would be called emotional response.
Right.
And that's how we make many, many decisions in our lives.
Sure.
And so that would be interesting to have a particle system where the individual particles don't only have functional, like they are away from that border, they all also saying, oh, it's getting too dense here. Or just like, yeah, that kind of shortcut summary of situation, which might be not objective, but that would be interesting. Have you thought about that, or like is that part of your research, or like
Well, I guess like
going away from the very formal decision making or like
yeah. Well,
calculation of a path?
I guess what you're talking about there would be comparable to something like you've kind of got modernism on one hand or postmodernism on the other, and they're kind of postmodernism is kind of this idea of
Yeah.
reducing everything down into, it's kind of it's breaking everything down into logical, systematic parts, like for examination, whereas postmodernism would be very much
Yeah.
the kind of mystical kind of approach that kind of really critiques that kind of
Yeah.
over logical kind of or over rationalization of
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
and that is something that is it has kind of arisen, like what you're talking about, because of cybernetics, this idea of, artificial intelligence, and can we program intelligence? But that's kind of jumping too far into it, kind of going, oh, well, we've kind of got these kind of great computer systems now that can make all these fantastic calculations. Surely we can program intelligence, or artificial intelligence, and kind of it's kind of like jumping to a conclusion, and I think we've kind of, I think we're kind of standing back from that a little bit now, and I think that's why artificial life is a little bit better, because it kind of takes this kind of idea of just
How to deal with complexities, maybe, Richard.
yeah, yeah, just kind of like even to try and maybe pull this conversation back to your own work, and what Mortal Engine is really, I guess, or Glow, or both of them are kind of experiments with, early experiments,
Yeah.
possibly
Yeah.
some of the first. I know it's
Yeah.
becoming a kind of it's
Yeah.
more and more widespread, the use of computers and technology and performance, but they are very early experiments of, very simple experiments about how, how does one impact on the other, how does the computer impact on how does computer software impact
Yeah.
on the dancer, and vice versa. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it's very I think that's what I find so interesting, is the fact that you were right there at the cutting edge of it, right at the
Yeah.
start, which I would kind of say is, I would say that you were avant-garde to that extent. So um, I guess I'll just read down to my questions. I'll try
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Sure.
refocus the conversation a bit, but well, I guess from that view, what are your views on the increasing responsibility of computers in performance, or do you have really any really experimental stuff where you just let the computer do its own thing? We kind of talked on this a little bit earlier about
Yes,
putting
I mean
restrictions.
we have done that, but well, with mixed results. Like
Mm,
one of the tricky experiments I have in mind was still with palindrome and the music interaction. So the idea was to make, because we had these discussions about what's interactivity. It's like a back and forth communication process, and actually many of our systems were only like one directional, like movement would trigger sound. What's the feedback?
mm,
Try to make a hybrid between machine and human performer, also in both directions. Like the movement analysis would generate score for real musicians,
okay.
and then the music would be analyzed with some MaxMSP, like Fourier spectrum analysis, and define space and movement for the as projection for the dancer. But it was really hard to get that in a like an active mode. It wouldn't just saturate, like
Yeah.
move very small or like move very large. So it's really hard to keep it in an interesting range. That's my experience, and I'm very production oriented. I'm not completely experimental. I mean, I do
Yeah.
experiments, and I experiment with new forms, like apply what I do to new fields. I mean, people have. taking the motion tracking to the zoo. I do it with apes or whatever, or I do it with acrobatic shows. So I try to find applications for new uses, and it's always something new coming out, something interesting in that application. So that's my way to experiment with possibilities. It's not like totally free form that I just let the algorithms fight each other. I mean, there are these robot fights also. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, just on that the point that you were talking about there, you're you know, taking your system, because you actually you actually sell your software online, right?
No. Yes and no. It's the
Oh no,
old
you don't.
software. It's the icon software that's that motion to sound approach from the early days. And the truth is, I give it away, even though on the website itself says you have to buy it. I just give it away, and the visual software I don't usually give away because there's no manual. I don't have the capacity to do any service or maintenance or.
Okay, because there
It's
was some of my
hard work.
questions.
It's really hard work to make
Yeah.
it a product.
Yeah.
And also, I think I developed a special aesthetic, like which is consistent in a way.
Mm-hmm.
The methods I use, and I want to keep that my own world.
Sure.
So I define the tool for my needs.
Yeah.
And if everybody would use the same tool, like remember that people said like, oh, this is Flash aesthetic, or like you can see which program is made with.
Yeah.
So.
No, yeah, that's nice. That's interesting. I'm kind of glad to hear that. Because
it's just not interesting to me.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know Isadora, Mark Coniglio?
Isadora, yeah. I'm aware of it.
It's a software, and he's a friend, and he lives also in Berlin, and he's painfully stressed for the last year. We hardly ever meet because he's suffering from bringing a new version of his software out, which is so much work and so much feedback. And
this is what's his name? The guy who
Mark Cornelio. This is
Mark Cornelio. Yeah. And he lives in Berlin now, does he?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's just like snowed under with tech support for his own software.
Yes, and he made a new release which is covering like these mapping aspects, like projection mapping.
All right.
And like he has this approach to make it a general tool as a product to live off the sales of the software. I just couldn't manage that amount of communication, which is necessary to do it, and all the demands and follow-ups. So it's not for me.
Yeah.
I'm more for production.
Yeah. And the icon thing, that's specifically for
it's like it doesn't have any visualization.
Yeah.
It's more like just triggers and parameter changes through movement.
Yeah. Because I was going to download it and have a look at it, because I actually wrote my own software in open frameworks.
Okay.
But it's really it's not, well, I mean, it's okay. It's just a bit dodgy. So you know, it's not even. I mean, I'm more of an artist. I don't come from a strict programming background, so it's kind of it's a bit ropey, my software. So it's just kind of.
What I wanted to mention about this software is it has this level where I write the code for the functions, but then if I'm in an actual production, I mostly configure it. So I can arrange elements and I can generate parameter stages and scenes. It has a queue list. So I don't make a new compiled version for each show. It's not necessary.
Yeah, sure.
So it has this configuration mode. It's a little bit like MaxMSP, like you can.
Yeah.
And it's not signal flow based. It's a bit simplified.
Yeah.
but you can arrange objects and filters and sequences of things, and then you have a scene management where you can switch between scenes,
Okay.
which is for theater use very essential.
Yeah.
It's not built in Maximus P really. Like it's very limited or put on like timelines and scene management. And for my own software, that was always key. And that's probably because I work with a choreographer with things in scenes. So that was always there.
Yeah, I must have a look at it. But it's available for Windows 7 or 8, is it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, download it. If you need the code, just send me an email.
Cool.
Well, I soon will bring out a version that doesn't need any codes.
Yeah. No,
I mean, it's old. It's like almost 20 years.
yeah. It's probably still better than mine, I assure you.
No. Anyway, great.
So, yeah, no, I was just, I guess, I was just wondering, what was it like working with Kylie Minogue? That it must have been pretty amazing to work on a really highly polished production, and I was just wondering how that compared to, working for, produced video as opposed to working in performance.
It was very interesting. I met this couple. They produce music videos, and they saw the Chunky Move work
Hmm.
online. They just looking for new stuff. So they asked me whether I would work on a music video, and said yes. I try everything,
Hmm.
see what it does, and then they basically applied with the Chunky Move video and put pop music underneath
Yeah.
when they pitched for the Kylie Minogue shoot. So it was a year after we met,
Okay.
and they loved that the production company. They wanted to do something, and I was a bit nervous. I tried to get Gideon as a choreographer, so because we understand how it
Yeah.
works, we had this good experience together. Um, they didn't agree. They had their own choreographer. They have their own team.
Right.
We only had a couple of days. I haven't met with a choreographer, so I was very nervous about it, whether they understand how close the movement has to be to the surface and how you can move, which makes sense. So, and well, Kylie was great. The production company was very organized. It
Hmm.
was really fast. And part of my skepticism was, will it translate to video?
Yeah.
Which some people question and say it doesn't work. I think it still works.
Yeah. I
Doesn't
think
it,
so.
it doesn't look like post-edited. You can
No.
still see that it's happening there in the studio.
Yeah.
So I think it was good success. You know, uh, it was really like I asked them like, what's the idea? What's the concept? And the truth is, they said like, look, anything that looks cool, right? There was no real concept, which is a bit ridiculous for an artist, but
That's probably
usually,
agree.
yeah, it will get worse. I'm right now. This is probably not ready to be published. I'm talking to Take That
Oh yeah.
about like they're doing a tour with 30 or 40 shows in the O2 Arena in London,
Yeah. Cool.
and like they're touring across the UK and Europe and doing a number there.
Stadium tours and stuff.
It's interesting. The scale is interesting. The
Yeah. Yeah.
stadium tour with a special stage. This is like with interactive projections. I mean, this is by far not signed, but I think
Yeah. No. Sure. And
they're
there's,
interested,
there's no
and
question.
I'm interested. I want to explore this possibility.
Sure. Absolutely. Take every
Yeah.
take every possibility you can and explore it. I guess the,
So
the philosophy.
I enjoy these productions.
Mm.
I would say sometime maybe this year there's more um, like this kind of show than artistic shows. I do a ballet in San Jose soon. I do an opera in Moscow. So they are like truly artistic projects. but these uses of theater approaches are also big part of my life now.
Yeah, like I mean, I thought the one with the is it I think it's part of an opera, right? It's the one where the dress, you've got a singer and the dress
The
comes up
the
around
big
and
risk. No. This is totally pop
yeah.
commercial.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
There
Yeah.
was Ellie Goulding at the Royal Variety Show.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's kind of interesting, though.
um, actually, I'm at a conference, a theater technology conference in London. I met a young guy, and he's very fun and ambitious, and he did stage management for Kate Bush, and he worked
Oh,
on the Olympics. So he's very production oriented and now becoming a producer. And he loves my work, so he's always pitching for it. And I think there will be many possibilities, be it pop or TV in the UK, especially. He's
yeah.
bringing.
What's the conference in London?
Um, I should look it up. What was it called?
Oh, it doesn't matter if you can't think of it
It
off
was
the top of your head.
at the university in London.
Okay.
I could look it up.
Yeah.
Theater technologies. I mean, King Kong was my theme. I wanted to know about King Kong.
Okay. Right. Were you presenting at the conference?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. I guess just more kind of like as I kind of like come towards the end here, it's more kind of a reflection, I guess, on as these technologies are becoming more widely available
Hmm.
and becoming more mainstream, I guess.
Hmm.
So, well, I guess as a pioneer of this kind of work, so I would kind of say that you were a pioneer of this kind of work or an avant-garde. Um, but these projects are now being rolled out particularly for kind of commercial work, kind of projection mapping for advertising and product launches. And I just was wondering, well, I guess you're also kind of involved in these. So so some of them, for example, the car launches and things like that. So just kind of wondering how what are your thoughts on being involved in it like right from the start, and I was just wondering what are your thoughts on the kind of the trajectory or the progression, because it's actually starting to become the thing to do now, for when you look at the kind of BMW product launches and things like that, it's kind of
Do
expected
you
nearly.
know the Gartner hype cycle?
Who?
Hype cycle, this graph. It's like Gartner
No.
IT marketing research.
Okay.
They came up with like this observation that technology is going through a certain cycle. They call it hype cycle,
Hype
which
as in HYPE, or sorry,
H,
HYP, hype
yeah,
cycle.
it's
Yeah.
very very easy. Can I need a pen.
Sure.
So this is how the hype cycle looks.
All right. Cool.
Has 5 phases: technology trigger, peak of inflated expectation, trough of disillusionment, slope of enlightenment, and plateau of productivity. You can look it up, and they publish it every year and put in technologies where they think they are in this cycle.
Okay.
It's like a stereotype of perception of technology in its cycle. And I was clearly going through this cycle.
Okay.
Technology trigger. I had this quality inspection system, right? It was just available, and I didn't really know where this is leading. And then around 2000 was the new economy hype, and our shows, they lived from creating a vision. like how it could be in the future. Many things didn't really work, or like didn't fulfill the expectation, right? Not every concept was as successful as you would dream, and that was the same with technology in society. There were things like Second Life, right? Artificial, simulation of virtual reality, which nobody talks about anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a little bit resembled by augmented reality, but there was this idea that we have a second entity, but now it's all merging, and it's like social network. You have an online part, right? So anyway, around 2000, there was a new economy hype. Every internet company, every digital product was overrated in a way. Then it crashed, and it also crashed for me in a way that nobody was interested in hearing the words interactive or multimedia. People didn't want that in performance anymore. Say in 2002.
Right.
It was the new economy crisis. It was 9/11. Just people weren't really vision triggered. So I went through the trough of disillusionment, and then the slope of enlightenment for me was the work with visuals and light and chunky move. That was a trigger. Like it basically was like a late phase already, right? That was, and then it is a level of productivity right now. It is used in theater, in shows, in commercial, which also means for me I need to go away from that and start something new, start a new cycle maybe. My life doesn't work in revolutions, it works in evolution, so I will add more depth or three-dimensional or sculpture to it. I'm doing more set design, sculpture design, which might use projections or interactivity. But definitely need to do another step.
Cool.
To not only do car shows.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing just car shows, but there's definitely, the time is right to shift focus a little bit. And my observation of technology is it's not a time for the big vision. I don't see that. It's not a new mobile phone coming out. It's just like, get a higher resolution display.
Yeah.
I think mobile and the social networks were the big developments in the last couple of years, and there's nothing on that scale I can see right now.
Yeah. I guess from that point of view, do you like, if you want to talk about it, do you have any like really interesting kind of projects in the pipeline? I guess I'd be quite interested in the fact that you said that you're more interested in evolution than revolution.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering what
I mean, what's on my list is doing more installation work, set design, shaping stages, making rooms and environment. It's like, in a way, a third dimension, which started with Chunky Move Model Engine with a laser.
Yeah.
Because my frustration with projection is it's always flat. It's attached to a surface. You can break up the room, which I have done. Like, it's not just one flat surface in the back of stage. You can have objects you project on, or it's performers you project on. But still, it's a little bit limited. It's not. It's a surface. Or like the dress of the Royal Variety. It's a three-dimensional object. Okay, and mapping is big. My contribution to mapping can be mapping on moving objects or moving performers. That's where it links in. That's definitely a part of it. mapping on moving entities, three-dimensionality, sculpture. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I guess yeah, there is only so far you can kind of take the two-dimensional surface.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like where can we go from there?
It's interesting because, for example, laser is always popular, or like always also apparent. I just saw a concert at Transmedial. Do you know Transmedial? It's
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't go to it, but
yeah.
I'd love to.
So I saw Robin Fox's concert, like
Oh yeah,
the guy we collaborated with in Model Engine.
Mortal Engine.
But to be honest, I wasn't happy with it.
Yeah. Mm.
I thought it was very consequent back then when we did Model Engine, like one color, a very clear relationship between sound and the visual. And now it's a little bit stuck. What can you do? Like, okay, you can add more colors. Like you can add red, green, and blue. Or they added video to it.
Mm-hmm.
They added some narrative to it, but it didn't really work for me. It fell apart. It wasn't that clear thing. And the problem is that I'm saying that because I want to make a laser installation. So I'm just struggling with it.
Yeah, yeah.
And seeing laser is like a symbol of the like for vision, for the future vision,
Mm.
but from the 60s, from long ago.
Yeah.
So it was always this idea that it symbolizes technology and future and like remote effect, like laser weapons and
I
all
guess
these ideas attached to it. But it's really hard to, maybe with that lack of a new vision, it's a little bit pointless.
I guess these technologies kind of go through kind of like they go through these stages of progression. We keep
Yeah.
getting a little bit better, a little bit better, and then suddenly they kind of go, oh, there's a kind of a saturation point or there's a
Mm-hmm.
breaking point that they pass through, and then suddenly there's all these new possibilities available with this technology that has been kind of like just kind of incrementally getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
It's very very slowly.
Yeah.
And even networks are an example of that. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
networks
mean,
are.
yeah. There's technical iterations. There's social iterations, like
Mm.
or there are artistic iterations. I had a
Mhm.
discussion at Transmedial, somebody teaching at the UDK, like the University of the Arts, and being very critical with artists, like they're saying like they don't have a vision, like no political vision, no social vision, which maybe might be true from a perspective of an older person like me, like mine. It feels like there's something
Mm.
missing. People are very success driven, or like they want to come out and have a huge audience, which is easily possible online.
Yeah.
So it's almost like um, more about defining a career and a product than a vision,
Yeah.
which is probably true for society right now. And I think that will sooner or later um, become really clear and like change our world. Because there are phases when things progress fast and you get excited. And I think for me at least there's also a big disappointment about technology, like how it's abused for surveillance and like secret
Yeah.
services and like just commercialization.
Hmm.
I'm very skeptical about these developments. And there's a book called The Master Switch. You
The
probably
what?
haven't
The
heard.
master switch.
The Master Switch.
Okay.
We're just talking about technology, like how the radio development changed. It was used as a community tool, or like where you could have public speech or like openness, and then it was given over to corporates, like big structures. And so it changed, and that's happening with the internet, right? This book
Yeah.
is quite old, but it's like a prediction of what will happen. It's happening right now. It's just changing,
Yeah, it's
and
inevitable,
it's
really. It's all,
yeah,
everything's kind of like taken up by marketing. Everything that can be used for
yes, and
marketing is
that
inevitable.
has its parallel in the arts.
Yeah.
I'm sure. It's arts are partly an asset, a speculation asset,
Hmm.
artworks. And maybe a goal for an artist is to have that valuation that you are sold for a high price. It's just part of life and society, how it
Yeah.
evolves. Yeah.
And do you get do you I guess to that point, do you kind of feel under pressure to kind of keep your work fresh or kind of ahead of the curve or?
Mm, no, I think everyone has a life cycle.
Mhm.
Every artist or human being is a student at some point and um, living off it, hopefully for a while.
Make
So,
hay while the sun shines, as they
yeah, right.
say.
um, I was never really thinking in those things. I wasn't driven by, hey, I have to make something substantially new. It was just like what I wanted to do.
Mm.
I wasn't even aware when I did. Like when we did Glow, had no idea what other people's are doing, how it's in relationship, whether it's relevant or not. I just didn't know.
Yeah, I guess my question was more focusing on what you're doing now rather than what you did back then, because I guess as your
Um,
techniques kind of become distributed across the masses,
mm,
um, do you feel pressure to kind of like tinker with new sensors or kind of tinker with new possibilities for lighting or even just get away from that altogether? I think you talked about what you were mapping
yeah.
ECG waves.
Mm. Um, I'm not too worried.
Uh-huh.
No. I want to try new things when I feel inspired by them or like attracted, and not because I think I need to stay on top of something. Not,
Hmm.
not my everyday thought. I mean, everybody has his ego, and you want to be still valued by
Yeah.
your little field. But I don't know, I'm not too worried about it.
Mm.
And maybe it's a different impulse, or like keeping up these discussions, or being critical or political, maybe.
Hmm.
Um, so keep the discussion up.
Do you have
And I think, I mean, the next generation needs to develop their own toys and
yeah,
possibilities.
yeah, right.
It doesn't have to be me.
And just sorry, you touched on the word politics there. I can't help
Yeah.
it. Do you have any kind of, well, I'm not asking what are your politics, but would you ever make work with kind of political views in mind, or
Um, yeah, just, I mean, I have something at like a, what we call museum night with the open museums. It's like a big thing in Nuremberg,
okay,
in my home city. And I was really upset about the whole spying and NSA and
yeah,
GHCQ issues, and like
yeah, me too.
this mass surveillance without being suspect. I mean, I'm not against uh, fighting crime, but just making it a mass surveillance
Yeah,
tool, which is changing individual freedom. It's really annoying me a lot. I talk to my students about it and use my time. And the motto of this thing in Nuremberg is freedom or independence.
Okay.
In Germany, there's only one word for it, Freiheit. And I do an installation there, which is not actually using projections. It's more like a sculpture, and it's picking up on the inspired by the Statue of Liberty,
Mm-hmm.
being like a you have like a flame as an object or like a moving sculpture. And in the program, I just was writing the program last night. It was quite political and critical about that. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, I mean, I love America, so it's always the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to fight for our freedom. It's only a short moment in history that we lived at that level of individual freedom.
Yeah.
And it can break easily without being noticed if everyone just said, I have nothing to hide. It's not true. It's not how freedom works.
Yeah. And what is the name of that sculpture? You said it's at the New Museum in America.
It's Lady Liberty's, I don't know the English translation, flame,
Okay.
like the thing, torch. Oh, is it a torch?
Yeah. Torch. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Oh.
I only use that Statue of Liberty things because I'm struggling with America. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is like a symbol of my world and freedom, and then why are they, for me, even destroying the internet
Yeah.
by mass surveillance, by collecting everybody's data? It's just really super annoying.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
know.
definitely changing how we live together,
Yeah. I mean,
how
even
much distrust we have. And, yeah. So I think, and it's not really understood how these processes work. They just slightly change how we use technology or what we use it for. And each step might be, okay, this is not really scary, but suddenly it is becoming something problematic. Or it
yeah.
changes your behavior. Implicitly changes your behavior.
Yeah. No. Absolutely, it does. That's something that I would be quite concerned with. In my own thesis. In fact, like I wrote a paper a couple of months ago about surveillance technologies, and um, just increasing eradication of privacy generally.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
mean, you nearly can't do anything on the internet now without it becoming
yeah.
public. Even the fact that I tried to interview you last week and accidentally invited everybody. Well, by default, everybody's invited.
Uh-huh.
So and I only realized that then after
Yeah,
people were
yeah.
texting me going, "Oh, sorry, did you invite me to something?" And I was like, "No." So well, anyway, this is private as far as I know.
No,
But
I'm sure
but-
it's put on a Google server and with
oh yeah, well
and might be reviewed by whoever wants to. Probably just a machine would probably review it. I just read an article today. I think now the telephone companies, um, they're all switching to voice over IP,
yeah,
right? Which makes technical sense. You don't want to use these analog or old-fashioned technologies.
sure,
But it's also part of mass surveillance because it's very easy to record.
yeah,
If every voice is just an IP data stream. And the secret services have taken political pressure to not implement any encryption. It's completely unencrypted. So they can just store it on the NSA servers. Everybody's
I think by default everything kind of is recorded to a certain extent, and then it's kind
yeah,
of dump. It's more like everything's recorded, and then they dump
it's
stuff. It's kind of like filtered and dumped.
unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And
next time we talk, it'll be in person.
it's, yeah, that's what people do. And that's the
Yeah,
big misunderstanding. You think, okay, every terrorist, they will just send an email and plan their things. What if they just meet in person? So that's what will happen. So
yeah,
the promise of 100% safety, security is just not true. Not
no,
going to happen, even if you collect all the data. And
yeah,
what I find interesting that mathematicians and like researchers say it's practically impossible to predict a very rare event with that
mm,
kind of data,
yeah,
because many people use keywords like bomb or terror, and
mhm,
that doesn't mean they might actually do anything. So it's completely random who
yeah,
will commit any crime. You can't predict it from the data. It's a theoretical impossibility. It's with rare events,
okay,
extremely rare events.
right. I didn't know that.
There's a theory behind that, and
Yeah,
that's criticized that it's actually not really functional. I mean, if you have suspects like the Charlie Hebdo
yeah,
attack, there was a discussion because most of these suspects are already known,
hmm,
on non-flying lists are monitored, but it's completely impractical to have every suspect so closely monitored, watched that you can control it.
mm,
It's not practical. It's unfortunate, but it's a misunderstanding, and it's destroying things on other aspects.
it's destroying trust, right? It's trust
It's
between
destroying
public
trust,
and governments.
and trust is a key to our society,
Hmm.
how our system works, or
Yeah,
anybody's human system works.
yeah,
The money system is based on trust. There's no value there. It's just you trust the bank that they will give you some of that money back.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's nothing else. There's no security. It's not backed with anything than the trust of everybody hoping they will eventually get something back.
Mm,
Or you, in the medical system, I see that with commercialization, there's suddenly a discussion. Maybe your doctor is only giving you that prescription because it gives him a better income.
yeah,
And if you destroy the trust in your doctor, then you're really in the problem.
yeah.
And it's partly already happening. So the erosion of trust is probably a big threat.
Mm. Well,
Okay.
there's a nice reflection to finish on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've kind of run out of questions
Yeah, sure.
from
Well,
my end.
that's great.
I think what your discussion and the reflections that you've given me have been immensely helpful.
Mhm.
And by the way, I'm a huge fan of your work. In case I didn't say
Thank
that at the
you.
start, yeah. So
Thank you.
it's it's really means a lot for me and my research to have this opportunity to talk to you. So I really
Great.
appreciate it. And
Thank you.
hopefully, there will be one article published in Theatre Design magazine.
Okay.
It's basically the article. It's kind of analysing Chunky Move,
Hmm.
and
Cool.
your collaboration with them on Mortal Engine.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that will be published in a couple of months, I'd say. And there's a new journal coming out called Theatre Design Research.
Okay. Cool.
So
Wow. Would be definitely interesting in reading
yeah, no,
your
hopefully
papers,
I'll
or also about other aspects like this artificial life or
yeah.
whatever you're touching. That would be very interesting to me.
Yeah, well,
Very
hopefully
interesting.
maybe we can organize some kind of symposium or something like that,
Yeah.
and maybe you can come over and talk here.
Sure.
I'm in Trinity Trinity College in Dublin in the drama department here. So
Okay. Okay.
we do organise stuff. So yeah, it'd be lovely to meet you in person and to have
Yeah.
some of those kind of reflections and conversation.
I do these a
Mm-hmm.
lot too. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, I hope to meet you in person sometime soon
Next
in the
time.
future.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, reader.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.